Hi, Linda.
Hi, how are you doing?
Okay, thank you. And yourself?
I'm doing well, thanks. It's great to be here with you today.
It's a pleasure to have you on. So, where are you coming to us from today?
I'm coming from Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Nice. So, it's still morning, approaching noon.
That's correct, 11 a.m. And you're 7 p.m.?
11. Yeah, 7 p.m. So, it's early evening here. So, how's your morning so far?
Oh, it's been great. We're having beautiful sunny weather.
Nice. So, you're a fan of the sun or fan of
Yes,
the heat?
very much. Yeah.
Same here. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have entered our winter months here, and I do not like the cold.
Oh, I'm with you on that. I could do summer
Yeah,
all year long.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The cold just makes you feel so dull,
Yeah.
but we make the best of it. We make the best of it. Appreciate the season, no matter what it may be, just appreciate the moment. That's where I shift my mentality. But thanks for joining. It's a pleasure to meet you. This is going to be a phenomenal conversation. So your work, okay, focuses around class, feminism, and mental illness, which is heart-touching topics. So before we get into like your book and the stories in the book and those specific topics, what's your story? Like, how did it all start for you? And how did you get to where you are now? Did you always want to be an author, or was it something that came up afterwards? Or you decided to turn these topics that I'm assuming you are passionate about into writing material to share with the world?
Well, I always wanted to be a writer. Even when I was a kid and people asked, what do you want to do when you grow up? It was be a writer.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was something I worked at really hard in high school. I studied literature in university and I always wrote in my spare time. And then life sort of got in the way. You think about how am I going to pay my rent and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And writing isn't the easiest way to make money for sure. So my writing kind of gets set aside. But then there were all these other things happening to me. I've dealt with mental health problems since I was a teenager. As far as race and class goes, I learned in university that I was working class, and it was like, oh, so that's why I think about certain things the way I do. And then I realized that race was a blind spot for me. And just all these things coming together started brewing in the back of my mind. So when the pandemic happened and I started seeing on social media that other people were writing the books they always wanted to write, I got a little jealous. And I thought, well, why didn't I think to do this, right? This is something you've
Yeah.
wanted to do your whole life. Why haven't you seized the opportunity? So I signed up for a mentorship program through Humber Polytechnic. And I did it with Danila Botha, who's actually a South African Canadian writer. And
Okay.
it just changed everything for me. I learned how to toughen up around rejection and got my work out there. And here we are.
So, like, what sort of writing material were you like doing, before you actually decided, or was there writing material you were doing before you decided to publish a book?
Um, I came to writing through poetry, which I'm not a great
Nice.
poet. I figured that out. I love reading poetry, but
Yeah.
it's a very challenging thing to do, right? So I figured out that I wasn't a poet, and then I stumbled into short stories, which I enjoy because they're a very compressed form. So they have something in common with poetry that you're really trying to whittle it down to the fewest number of words to express what you're saying. And I ended up having, I don't know, maybe half a dozen stories that I was really proud of sitting in a drawer. And I pulled those out at the start of the mentorship. And that was the springboard for the book.
And what sort of poetry, even though, you feel, it wasn't like your best work, what sort of poetry were you writing?
Oh, I think it was really angsty teenage stuff. Yeah, nothing I'd be proud to share anymore. Yeah, and I think when we're teenagers, we're very very interested in romantic relationships, right?
Yeah,
So all that
yeah.
stuff. I mean, you have to work through it, right? It's a phase.
Yeah, it's a phase. It reminds me also when I was also in school, I love to uh, rhyme, like I was putting
Oh,
sentence together and I was writing and then, I was putting poems, but I knew I didn't have like a passion for it. But then later on in my life, I knew where it was leading because now, because I come from a musical background and I'm in the music industry, now, I understand why I had some sort of feeling towards it because now it helps me, when I'm with artists and we jotting down lyrics and, so on, especially like with hip hop. But I'm not like the best, but I get where you're coming from. And it was all based around love,
yeah.
I mean, I got a Shakespeare, like a thick book, a while back, and I browsed through it, reading different plays, and I'm still trying to figure out what he was talking about, you know. But there's like this interest, I got like that interest. Okay, let me read this and let me try to figure out what exactly, he's saying because there's like a difference, in reading a play or a poem and then watching, like a movie based on it,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah,
It's meant
so I
to be
mean that's
performed.
yeah. So when it comes to let's touch on, let's say, feminism. Okay. Now, does this topic play a role in your life because of what's happening in society globally with regards to the topic? Hence why you wanted to write about it?
I'm very much of the mindset from the second wave of feminism where they said, the personal is political. And that's sort of
Right.
what awakened me to, oh, so you've experienced domestic violence or rape. It's not just a Lynda thing, a misfortunate thing that happened to you. This is part of rape culture. This is a system, right? You start to make connections, connecting the dots, and then it's like, oh, maybe I want to share that with more people because I didn't come to adulthood realizing that. I wasn't educated about it, and I think books make your world bigger. So even if you're reading short stories and maybe you're not picking up a book thinking, "I'm gonna learn about feminism," you might get something out of it, right?
Yeah. Okay. You also mentioned mental illness, and I'm going to explain why I'm bringing it up. So, like, even with this podcast, and there's another podcast I host or co-host, which is called Talking Back to Suicide, and we also focus on mental illness. So,
Okay.
and it's something that's, still highly floating around, the world globally. So, if you don't mind sharing, and only if you're comfortable, like what was your experience with that? Because there's so many creators out there as well that are struggling with mental illness, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. And, one of the mandates also, with the podcasts, the tool is to assist them with that, because it's so difficult
Mhm.
to deal with as a creative.
Thank you for asking that. I think that's an important question. It's important that we discuss it, right? And mental illness intersects with my life in several different ways. First of all, I have bipolar disorder. So I live that every day. My mother also has bipolar disorder, and she didn't get a diagnosis until I was 17. So it's interesting to grow up with a parent who has a mental illness but doesn't have the diagnosis. That can be challenging at times. And at the same time, I wouldn't change it. I love my mother. I think she was a competent parent, and I wouldn't let having a mental illness stop you from being a parent. And then I've also lost loved ones to suicide. So there's all these different ways that mental illness affects my life. And I think that's really the reality for so many of us, that it's more than just one thing. It can be part of our identity, it can be something in our family, and it affects our friends.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't know how long, you'll be dealing with it. So, like, I mean, coming from a mental illness background and dealing with it, how did like it define like your work later on in life or your life? If you come to like accept it, it's part of me, it's there, and I'm gonna like route it in a positive way, or does it affect you in a negative way when it comes? Because as a creative, also, you can be your worst critic, overthink stuff, and then you get anxious about it. Does that happen to you? Or is it like a
Oh, for
natural?
sure. Yeah. I think in a way, my creative endeavors have saved me to an extent from succumbing to mental illness, because it is a scary place to live inside my head sometimes, because there's so much anxiety, so many negative thought loops, and being able to immerse myself in something like writing, when you get into that space where you're just in the flow state, it's a relief, right? So it's such a blessing to have that. Um, but I also do get in my own head and get in my way in terms of creativity. Just, I think I get discouraged more easily, but at the same time, living with something like bipolar disorder that affects you chronically, isn't going to go away, makes you resilient in a way that lends itself to standing up to the rejection that you face when you're trying to get your work out there.
Yeah. And what sort of like organic methods, eliminating medication and doctors and, you know, psychiatrists, like have you practiced in your life that has assisted you as a creative?
That's a good question, because I often don't separate the whole treatment thing. Like, I think of it as, okay, I need the medication, I need the doctor, but I also need to do my own work. And peer support has helped me a lot. I have a dear friend who lost her brother and her mother to suicide. And we are like a support group of two. I think she sometimes calls herself a death doula, because she's supported so many people through similar losses. And just having someone in your life who gets the bad days, who gets just how black and dark it can feel, and is on the level with you, right? Because when you're talking to a therapist or a psychiatrist, there is a power dynamic. It's not the same sort of relationship you have with someone else who's walked in the same shadows.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's for my experience, bringing up the topic, with so many creators, there's so many like different opinions and examples about what people have experienced, and it's so hard. I mean, we use these platforms, to educate people on the matter, but it's like, one of those situations where it's easier said than done. You know, it's hard, and each person is, different. But I would love to, after this show, reach out to you. I'll also keep Mickey in the loop, to bring you on to talking back to suicide, just to share your experience. Because I mean, the main mandate of that is to prevent further suicides happening, globally. It's an ambitious goal, but we rather try than sit back and do nothing at all. Because, for me personally as well, I know how it's affected my life as well growing up, and all the trauma that I had to go through. It's not an easy journey. It's still not an easy journey, but we just learning, deal. And as people talk about, I'm also getting tips from them, they're getting tips from me, and we're all just assisting each other through this process of life, you know. So yeah, so if you don't mind, I would love to reach out to you, to join us on that, just to share your experience and advice, for
That would
people
be a
out there.
pleasure.
Yeah. So your book, which is quite a cool name, I'm not gonna lie. The beauty and the hell of it. Okay, let's start there first. How did you come up with that name? Like, what
So
sparked?
that's actually taken from a line in one of the stories, and the line is about marriage. And basically, it's saying that you have to choose your partner over and over every day, not just once when you say your vows. And that is the beauty and the hell of it. But I think it also extends to many of the stories where what you see is the beauty of something and the hell of it tend to go together. It's very hard to separate them.
Yeah, yeah. So like I went through, specific descriptions of, stories that, you mentioned in the book. And even though you're a short fiction writer, there's like this dotted line, between nonfiction and fiction again. So when it comes to actually, writing these stories, part of your creative process, is there a level, of nonfiction as well?
I find nonfiction very hard to write, but I think that's why I turn to fiction. I take things that I can't grapple with in nonfiction, things that have happened to me, and then I impose them on characters. And that's sort of where the fiction and the nonfiction meet. Was that
Yeah,
the question? Did I get that?
yeah, yeah. Because like when I look at the examples, okay, that you mentioned in the press release, and I'm thinking, okay, non-fiction fiction author, but like I'm feeling, okay, these sort of stuff, can happen, has happened, maybe will happen, like in reality, in real life, and then especially now when I link it back to the topics that you focus on. So like where does like where like the source of it? Is it all imagination, or is there like a part of, okay, this is what happens in the world itself?
It's very much a cocktail. Yes, these things will happen, and then I'll start questioning. Like, sometimes it's something I witness, and I start to wonder, what would I do in that
Yeah.
situation? Or let's invent a character who now has to decide what to do in that situation. And then there are other stories, like it varies so much from story to story, where it's very close to my own life, and just in order to process it, I needed to fictionalize characters and let them experience it.
And how's your character development? Like, does it, like most authors, they pop up in my dream? You know, what's yours?
Yeah, I'm a pantser, so I don't plan. Like, I know some people will write pages about their character before they even step into the story, and I don't do that. A story often starts with a line bouncing around in my head, so there's already that character's voice in the line, and then I just kind of follow the voice. What are you trying to tell me? And then there's definitely a lot of false starts to that method, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
me very much in the dark, feeling out what the character's trying to say through me.
Yeah. The first description, that I saw there was the girl meets her rapist at his engagement. That's deep. Like, I mean, that's deep. Now, I don't want you to give away all of it, but like, can you touch on like, within the book itself, like what what is that girl like experiencing, in that moment? Like that must be so traumatic, you know. We have to visualize it, happening in the real world. Like, wow.
Absolutely. And that story came from a
Yeah.
place of me having had the experience of being assaulted and wondering, what would I do if I saw this person again? Because there is, I think, a very common tendency to have some revenge fantasies, right? When you've had
Yeah.
something taken from you like that. And I think maybe it's part of moving through the grief to have those fantasies. I certainly had my share of them. And then I got to a point with it where I didn't really think about it that much anymore. And in this story, 10 years have passed. So I wondered, to what extent would the trauma affect me? Like, would I actually respond? Would I be able to respond? And that's kind of what the story explores. I mean, yes, there's time that's passed since the trauma, but seeing a person who's done that to you can take you right back.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. Imagine 10 years later, you've probably spent 10 years, overcoming the trauma. And then 10 years later, now you see this person again. It can take you all the way back, in 1 second, one view, take you all the way back. So is the level of, with your stories, is there a level within the book itself of actually guiding, someone out there who's reading it on how to, handle themselves in a situation if they ever find themselves in that situation?
And that story, that's not the way it turns out. It's definitely not, it's not directive in that sense. It's a bit of a story about what happens when women do and don't believe each other when they
Right,
share that
right,
kind of thing. So I won't give away the whole story in that sense, but it
right,
gives us something to think about in terms of, do we show up for each other when we say, "Hey, this happened to me," even though maybe the person who did this to you is someone you knew or know
yeah,
and think highly of?
yeah, yeah. That's the punchline right there. That's the punchline right there. That was like what I was waiting for, because that's so true. That's so true. Real life stuff, happening. Do we actually, believe the person, when we say, okay, this happened to me by that person? So yeah, 100%. So when it comes to your publishing, like, are you self-published or are you working through a publisher?
I'm working with a small press publisher, based out of Ontario, Canada.
And how's the relationship with the publisher? Have you ever tried being self-published?
I haven't, no. It's my first book, so, it's
Right.
always something to explore. As far as the relationship with the publisher goes, it's hard being removed, like, by several provinces, like, geographically. It would be lovely to be able to sit down in person, to meet them. So I've had a relationship with them over email, basically.
Right.
So that component of the relationship, I would definitely love to have in the future, but that's a luxury also to have. I'm very grateful to have a small publisher to work with, because short stories are a harder sell. Like a lot of the big four, in North America, unless you're an established writer with an audience already, aren't
Yeah.
excited about looking at them.
Yeah. And being with with the publishing company that is small, do you still have like full creative control of your work?
You do get a lot of say working with a small publisher. Like, I was blown away when we were working on the cover that I had any say in it. I wasn't expecting that. I thought someone would
Yeah,
show me
yeah,
a cover and that would be it.
yeah. I guess that's the benefit. Like, some authors would rather prefer to be self-published because they keep full creative control. But then I guess they've had like a bad experience, like with a big publishing company versus a small one. Whereas with a small publisher, of course they're gonna like include you as part of the process. As you said, you're part of the cover, because they know that's how. It's more like they in the independent. They are publisher, but they're more in the independent space. So the deal is
Absolutely.
structured differently, because I see that happening. So that happens the same like within the music industry.
Oh,
Yeah, I think
wait,
we lost each. Ah, there we go. Back.
there we go.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes, we're doing good.
Yeah, there we see the network. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, so I mean, the same happens, like for myself, like I'm also an independent publisher, registered in South Africa for music. But of course, now it's in the independent space, of course, control.
Oh, okay. Lost each other. Okay, I can hear you again.
Can you hear me or just can't see me?
I can see you and hear you now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I lost you for a bit there. Yeah, so I mean, that can be beneficial, it still works the same as being self-published. But as long as the relationship is good between you and the publisher, that's all that matters. Not someone dictating to you all the time, do this, do that, change that. And do you work with, do you work with like an independent editor or all through the
Um,
publishing company?
it goes through the publishing company. Sorry about that.
Okay.
So
No, no.
there was an editor who was assigned to me, and it was lovely working with her. It was just, as a first time writer, you don't know what to expect, right? And you can be a little bit apprehensive for sure about what's going to happen when you get those edits. And it was just, I would describe it as a very gentle process, which is so affirming as a writer.
Yeah. No, definitely. From what I've gathered, it is a good relationship, that you do have. So what was the feeling like when the book finally got released, since it was your first book? Like,
Oh, the
what were
feeling is
your
ahead of
emotions
me.
in that moment?
Um, September 1st is the release date for the book. So that part of it is still ahead of me, but getting the news that
Yeah,
they wanted to sign with me was just so overwhelming. I didn't know what to feel first, right? Because you don't know if anyone's going to want your book. And at the same time, it's just a relief. Like, part of me was like, I'm ready to cry that somebody actually wants to share this with the world, And there's joy too. It's such a mix. Like, it's a funny headspace to be in.
yeah. Okay, so just to the listeners, the book has not been released yet. It will be released on the 1st of September. So the book, is it going to be available in physical and digital, Kindle?
That's correct. Yes. Yes. And it's available for pre-sale already on Amazon or through a local independent here in Canada, Barnes and Noble in the States.
Okay, nice. So, where can people now on your website? I know you got a website. So, if people go directly to your website, they will find the links to go to pre-sale on Amazon, for example, or will they have to go directly to Amazon? Search your name. Of course, I will include the link in the description, but which is
There's a
best
link.
process?
Yes, thank you. There's a link on the website to Amazon Canada. I should include one for the States. That has to be updated, and then globally as well.
Well, I'm going to assume like there is updates on your website. I haven't viewed it as yet. Is there
Yes.
updates? Do you give regular updates to the community, to people tuning in? Okay, it's going to be here, it's going to be there. Okay, no, that's perfect. So from now until 1st September, have you already started working on new material? Like what's next for Lynda?
Not a novel. I've been told that's what you're supposed to do next, but I love short stories, so that's what I'm doing. I'm writing
Yeah.
more stories. I want to do another collection. I've been exploring the theme of betrayals, how we betray ourselves, each other, the planet. Yeah, so that's what I'm working on right now.
So do you ever see yourself putting a novel together in the future?
Possibly. Like, if I ever had a story that came to me that needed that much space to be told, absolutely. But I also feel like it's an entirely different craft when you have that much room digress and explore, unpack things, which is lovely, right? I love reading novels too. But it's a new skill
Yeah.
to learn how to put that together, what to include, what to leave out. With short stories, you're just always paring down.
Yeah. Yeah. This was great because if my memory serves me right, this is the first time I've had an author on the show where it's like I've just entered, the game. My first book is still coming out. You know, it is actually the first time. Normally, it's already established authors. They already have material that's out there. They're working on the next book, next piece of work. So this was now like another milestone for the show itself.
For me,
To get that feedback from an author that's now just about to release their book. Yeah, and because normally, the final question at the end of the show that I always ask authors, because they've released so much material, they've built their community. Um, Whereas for you, all that is like still coming, building the community bigger and larger, and then I asked them the question about artificial intelligence and how that plays a role, in their life. And are they affected by it? Do they see it as a great tool to be used for their career? Do they see it as a threat? And here's Lynda now, who's been signed on, with the publisher. She's about to release a book. It's her first book, living in this technological era where AI is just keep getting more and more advanced. So my point is that it's possible. It's still possible because there's so many creators out there, Lynda, that have so much anxious thoughts about artificial intelligence, whether they should pursue, their passion or not, whether it's worth it, you know. So what's like your brief like opinion, like, on that when it comes to artificial intelligence and moving forward?
okay. I actually moderated a panel last summer on artificial intelligence, and up to that point, I knew nothing
Okay.
about it. I was not informed. But the most valuable thing I took away from that panel was you may not have a choice about it. It could be like cell
Yeah.
phones and become so ubiquitous that you just, you don't get a say in this. It's an expectation that you're going to use it and live with it. Um, but I would not let that scare you off from pursuing your passion. I don't think that artificial intelligence will replace us as writers in the way that if you think about the checkouts, I worked in retail for years, and when the automatic checkouts came in stores, people were upset because they said, that's going to take away jobs. But what we've learned is they're slower than a cashier, they're stupider than a cashier. You need someone to manage them. There's still a person managing the machine, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think artificial intelligence is similar, that it's going to need some people behind it. What disturbs me the most is how it's being trained. Um, Information that's, art basically is being harvested without any recognition of the writers. It's training itself on that bothers me
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms of copyright.
Yeah. 100%. Because who owns it? Once it's done, who owns it? That's the
Exactly.
question. But there's so many question marks there. I actually had an attorney, an entertainment attorney on the show about 2 weeks ago, and we touched on artificial intelligence. She actually brought it up before I could. And she says, she's keeping like an eye on it each and every single day, what's going to happen with it, because who owns it? So how does, say she has a client, for example, that she's representing, and now the client's work is, filtered its way, it's been used by someone because of artificial intelligence. How do we handle that? Now it's also based on what Congress will say or what this government will say, So she said there's just so many question marks, and all we can do right now, from her career as an attorney, for us as creators, is just keep an eye on it, daily, to make sure that, okay, we can use this. So it is what it is for now, question mark. But for creators out there, as you said, they should not stop or give up just because someone can go on to chat GPT and put a novel together in 5 minutes. You write your organic story that means the world to you, that you're passionate about, and you will find your readers out there. Definitely.
Absolutely.
And I guess that's the same, I always ask the question at the end because, I just want, creators from all around the world to share that and all share the same thing. Look, it is what it is. It can't replace us. If you are using it, use it responsibly. Let it be your PA, your assistant, but don't write your story, your book, your short story on it, with a prompt. That's going to do you no good. It's going to do you no good. And Lynda, on social media, are you around?
I am on
somewhere.
Instagram, floating around as lowercase Lynda Williams _author. Yes.
So Instagram is your main playground.
It's my main playground. I'm on Facebook too as Lynda Williams. I'm just not as consistent on Facebook, I guess I would say. Instagram's where I hang out.
Yeah. I mean, with all these platforms there, you find the one that's, your comfort zone, where you're comfortable, that works for you, and, you stick with that. Can't be like in a million places at once, because then you're going to be spending most of your day on social media.
It's a vortex.
But I'm grateful. Okay. Yeah. Well, you know what? For the ones who want to be all over, I'm glad. Okay, at least there's tools you can pay for these days. Where you just link up your accounts and it just distribute it wherever you want. But I still feel like you need to build your presence like in 1 to 3 solid places and stick there. Just stick there.
Yeah.
100%. Thank you, Lynda. Is there anything else you would love to share that we may have missed out?
No, just thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I think we touched on some important stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was a pleasure getting to know you. And honestly, from my heart to yours, I wish you all the best for the upcoming book. September will just be like, yeah, we are, So all the best for that. I got no doubt it's going to be a success. I'm looking forward, Of course, being like in South Africa, Kindle is like my best option these days. Even though I like physical books, but by the time it actually gets here, you're like, no ways, But yeah, I'm looking forward for that. Sounds like it's going to be something truly special and amazing. And yeah, I'm proud of you. Nice. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Okay.
And we'll definitely chat soon. I will reach out to you and I will keep Mickey in the loop as well on the email for Talking Back to Suicide. So the co-host, her name is Dana. She's a retired psychiatrist. She's based out in the States. So I'll keep her on the email and then she will advise when's the next available date. And yeah, it'll be cool to chat with you on that show as well.
I would love that. Right.
Okay. Thank you so much and please enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Take care.
Okay, bye. You too. Bye.